10 contestants face off against each other and survive in the wilderness, each allowed to bring only 10 items. They will take on this survival challenge at Chico Lake, Canada. The one who endures the longest will win a grand prize of $500,000. The boat carried the first contestant to the island. His name is Tim. After a heartfelt farewell to the crew, he suddenly couldn't contain his mix of nervousness and excitement on his first time here. Back home in Wyoming, Tim is a professional hunter, specializing in tracking and taking down large wild animals. Even massive black bears have fallen to his skills. He's also highly skilled in crafting strange and unique hunting traps. Now, with 4 children to take care of, Tim is determined to win the $500,000 prize to change his family's life. Not long after arriving, Tim discovered tracks left by a grizzly bear. Being alone in the wilderness and encountering one of these creatures would be extremely dangerous. His initial excitement quickly turned into a heavy sense of concern. The most urgent task now was to find a safe place to shelter before nightfall. The next contestant to join the show is Clay. He's on his way to find his first meal. After walking just a few hundred meters, Clay discovered a large patch of pine mushrooms, an incredibly rare and hard-to-find delicacy in the wild. Without hesitation, he gathered a whole big bag full of them. Back home in Idaho, Clay is a video creator with over 15 years of wilderness survival experience. He's skilled in crafting different types of bows and arrows, and whether it's fishing, hunting, or building a shelter, nothing is a problem for him. To give his family a better life, he specially signed up for this competition. While wandering around the forest, not far ahead, a grouse suddenly dashed across his path. Instantly, Clay raised his bow and nailed it with one perfect shot. His accuracy was truly top-notch. With ease, he secured his first lunch. He went to the riverside and plucked all the feathers, planning to make grouse and mushroom stew tonight to satisfy his cravings. As Clay was cooking dinner, a sudden noise behind him startled him. My God! A fully grown mountain lion was staring intently at Clay. Seeing this, he reached for his bow, ready to teach it a lesson. However, the animal suddenly vanished without a trace. Let's check in with Matt. The moment he set foot on land, he spotted a moose out on the lake. If he could catch one right from the start, that would be incredible. He could probably just lie back and win the whole thing. Unfortunately, the distance to the shore was just too far. Matt used to be a primitive survival instructor, teaching people how to live off the land, a job he's fully devoted himself to. For this survival challenge, Matt feels extremely confident that he can win the championship, perhaps as a way to prove his skills. He's the only contestant who didn't bring a fire starter. Determined, he grabbed a stick and began rubbing, hundreds of times. But no matter how hard he tried, there was no spark. Still, Matt refused to give up. He kept going, putting all his strength into the effort. Finally, through sheer perseverance, a small flame flickered to life. Wanting to familiarize himself with the surrounding terrain, Matt decided to take a walk around the campsite. The man you see drinking rainwater is Chico, the only true heavyweight contestant this season, quite literally. He's a famous pop singer with his own band, and when he's not performing, Chico enjoys hunting and learning wilderness skills. This competition is a golden opportunity for him to showcase his survival abilities and learn from the other participants. He's determined to take home the grand prize. While scouting the area around his campsite, Chico discovered an iron bar by the riverside. Since he didn't bring his own knife, he came up with a plan to forge a blade out of it. Though it sounds simple, the process was anything but. He spent an entire day and night tirelessly working on it. And finally, the rough shape of a blade began to emerge. Next, he'll need to find a way to polish it until it's perfectly smooth. Rose is the first female contestant to step into the wild this season. Last night, she slept under a simple shelter, but today's mission is to find a more suitable location to build her long-term camp. A gentle-natured huntress, Rose is entirely self-taught in the art of hunting. Back home, she runs a sporting goods store and an outdoor training center, often leading wilderness expeditions with friends. Even large prey like musk oxen have fallen to her skills, proving that Rose is a true warrior in the wild. After a long search, she finally found an ideal spot to set up camp. Given the extreme cold of winter in this area, she knew there was no need to build a massive structure, just one that was warm and efficient. Before long, The main framework of her new shelter was already taking shape. By the time day 3 rolled around, Tim decided to move his shelter up into the mountains for his own safety. Word has it the black bears in this area are especially aggressive, so he made the call to build a much sturdier shelter. He went with a classic slanted roof design. Once the main frame was complete, he finished it off by covering it with a waterproof tarp. With his new home ready, Tim set off in search of some much-needed protein. Spotting a grouse perched quietly on a tree branch, he didn't hesitate, picked up a rock and hurled it. Unfortunately, his aim was off and the bird got away. Not one to give up, Tim turned his attention to salmon. He quickly fashioned a metal fish hook and headed to the river to test his luck. But just as he began casting, a strong wind kicked up. He tried over 10 times, but failed to land a single catch. Disappointed but not defeated, he returned to camp to rest and regroup. Let's check in on Matt. He was surveying the terrain when, as he approached a small forest ahead, a shadow suddenly darted across his path, startling him. A massive grizzly bear was staring straight at him, growling. The sight shook him to the core. Thankfully, the bear didn't seem to have any intention of attacking. But now, Matt truly realized just how dangerous this place could be. Day 5 has arrived. Clay woke up very early. The chicken and mushroom stew he made a few days ago was long gone. So today, he planned to go fishing. 3 days ago, Clay had crafted a fishing rod with a spinning reel. His craftsmanship is truly unmatched. He stood by the lake for 2.5 hours. Not a single bite. The silence made him feel incredibly lonely. At that moment, he thought, wouldn't it be amazing to have a lover by my side right now? What about you? Do you have someone special? Finally, just as daylight broke, he caught a salmon. This catch would be enough to feed him for the next 2 days. Just as everyone was gradually getting into the rhythm, Tim ran into serious trouble. While sleeping, he suddenly felt intense chest pain. After going without food for 5 consecutive days, the pressure on his chest worsened due to a past heart condition. Doctors had previously advised him not to participate in the competition, but Tim still wanted to give it a shot in hopes of winning the prize money. However, his body could no longer handle the strain. At this point, winning the money didn't matter anymore. Getting home safely to his wife and children was the only thing that truly mattered. He made the difficult decision to call the production team and officially tap out of the game. Medical staff quickly arrived to check his condition, and with everyone's support, Tim returned home safely. What will happen next, when the hidden elements have yet to be revealed? Let's wait and see. This is the best survival show I've ever seen. 10 contestants will take part in a survival competition at Chico Lake, Canada. Here, they won't just have to face attacks from wild animals. The most crucial challenge will be enduring the loneliness of the remote wilderness. The winner will take home a grand prize of $500,000. Coulter is the 6th contestant of this season. Just one look at his bald forehead, and I can't help but think of Ed Stafford. He's planning to scout the surrounding terrain. Back in Alaska, Coulter has been teaching for 14 years, runs his own survival school, and even owns a private island. His greatest strength? Wilderness survival. He once lived alone through an entire 42-day winter. His reason for joining the competition? Simply because his mom is a devoted fan of the show. He hadn't gone far when he came across tracks left by a grizzly bear. This area is known for its high population of both large and small bears, so he'd better be careful. The contestant in front of us, with a beard longer than his hair, is named Nate. Nate served in the military for over 28 years and took part in 2 combat missions. For him, wilderness survival is the most basic skill of any soldier. Even after retiring, his passion for the wild never faded. He frequently ventures into nature alone, embracing the challenges it offers. Wanting to bring pride to his family, Nate specifically signed up for this competition. It didn't take him long to spot an animal trail, most likely left by prey. Following it might just lead to a lucky encounter. Just as he predicted, a grouse suddenly flew into view. Protein was practically knocking at his door. Not wanting to miss the chance, he grabbed his bow and fired. But sadly, the arrow only managed to pluck a single feather. Looks like he's going to bed hungry tonight. Now let's talk about Teresa, the 2nd female contestant this season. As per the rules, she starts by surveying the surrounding terrain. Back in her homeland, the United Kingdom, Teresa is an expert in the Stone Age, and she even holds a PhD in the field. She is skilled in a wide range of complex and diverse techniques, and all the tools she uses are made from stone. Her main reason for joining this show is to apply everything she's learned in the past and truly experience the harshness of nature. To avoid expending too much energy, she only needs to build a simple shelter. Afterward, Teresa heads to the river to boil herself a pot of water. As for food, she doesn't need to worry about it for now. Michelle is another female contestant of this season. To boost her protein intake, she roasted a grasshopper she had caught over the fire, then popped it into her mouth. The crispy, delicious flavor was so satisfying that Michelle couldn't stop expressing her delight with hand gestures. She spent 4 years living with indigenous people in Alaska, through which she mastered a wide range of survival skills. In addition, Michelle is also an elementary school teacher who once lived in a self-built shelter for 2.5 years. Now, with the dream of building a happy life with her husband, she is determined to win the $500,000 prize. Just as she was sitting by the lake, relaxing, a dark shadow suddenly appeared on the distant surface of the water. Looking closer, oh my goodness, it turned out to be a massive grizzly bear taking a bath. It was the first time Michelle had seen one that big. Though she tried to stay calm, fear jolted through her body. Her heart nearly stopped. She knew she had to get out of that dangerous spot as quickly as possible. The strongest contestants haven't shown up yet. Let's wait and see in the next episode. This is honestly the best survival show I've ever watched. 10 contestants will take part, and the one who wins will receive a $500,000 prize. Make sure to subscribe to the channel so you can catch the next episodes as soon as they're out. Have a great day, goodbye, and see you next time. Waving hand, evergreen tree, flexed biceps. 10 survival experts will take on the challenge of surviving 100 days at Chico Lake. Whoever makes it to the end will win a grand prize of $500,000. Before we dive into the video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next exciting episodes. Let's get started. In the previous episode, Tim had to withdraw from the challenge due to heart issues. Fortunately, the crew was able to get him home safely. Now, only 9 contestants remain in the competition. Stay tuned until the very last episodes to find out who will walk away with the $500,000 prize. Jordan is the 10th contestant in the competition. While chopping wood to build his shelter, he discovered a large number of ants, an excellent natural source of protein. He managed to swallow a few big mouthfuls, finding the sour and slightly sweet taste surprisingly good. Back home in Tennessee, Jordan is a professional carpenter who enjoys making traps and outdoor structures. He also has a passion for wilderness survival. To pay off his mortgage and fulfill a promise he made to his late daughter, he entered this competition with great determination. He planned to build a slanted roof shelter to protect himself from black bear attacks, meaning the shelter had to be extremely sturdy. However, such work consumed a lot of energy, so he decided to sleep outside for the night. Later that night, while deep asleep, he was startled awake by the sound of a grizzly bear growling nearby, so frightening it nearly made him pee his pants. Luckily, the bear didn't seem interested in attacking him. At dawn the next day, Jordan observed grizzly bear tracks all around his camp and immediately felt the danger. He knew he had to quickly finish building his shelter. There was no more time to waste. On day 6, the weather seemed rather gloomy. As for Coulter, he was the second contestant who chose not to bring a fire starter. Before joining the competition, he had tested this method hundreds of times at home, boasting an 80% success rate. However, starting a fire in this environment proved far more challenging. It took him over 3 hours to finally get a flame going. Unlike the other contestants who focused on building sturdy shelters, Coulter decided to construct a wooden boat instead. He began by securing the boat's frame using logs, then layered it with waterproof fabric. Next, he chopped a few branches to reinforce the boat's sides and even added 3 support posts to prevent the hull from cracking under pressure. Finally, he made a simple paddle. Excitedly, Coulter dragged his little boat down to the water. But as soon as he sat on it, the boat nearly tipped over due to its unstable center of gravity. Luckily, he managed to regain control. Just a few minutes later, he was already paddling out, ready to go fishing. Let's check in with Teresa. She decided to dig an underground shelter, a method known for its excellent heat retention, helping her stay warm even when winter arrives. Since the show doesn't allow contestants to bring shovels, she had no choice but to use a wooden stick to dig, slowly and steadily. Teresa spent the entire afternoon working, and by the end, she had dug a hole about 1 meter deep. Next, she erected a large, sturdy central pole. She reinforced the base with stones and filled the area with water to make the structure even more stable. Then, smaller logs were arranged around it in a circular pattern. Looking at her creation, Teresa felt confident. Confident enough to believe she could stay here for all 100 days. Her neighbor, Michelle, was also busy building her shelter. She tied wooden poles together to form 2 tripod supports, then installed a horizontal beam across the top. After that, she filled in both sides with more wood and finally covered the structure with a waterproof tarp. Taking a look at the interior, it seemed pretty solid, good enough to keep out the rain and wind. I'd give her shelter a 7.5 out of 10. What about you? At this point, Nate finally remembered he needed to build a shelter. He didn't ask for much. As long as it could block the wind and rain, that was good enough for him. To get some protein, Nate headed to the lake to check the fishing line he had set earlier. And just like that, wish granted, he quickly caught his first salmon. He returned to camp and started cooking right away. With fresh mushrooms and wild berries on the side, it was basically a 5-star restaurant meal. How harsh would it be to survive in the wild, where contestants are required to have master-level survival skills, from building shelters to top-notch hunting abilities? If you were only allowed to bring 10 pieces of equipment, how many days do you think you could survive out there? It's now day 7 on the island, and only 9 contestants remain. Chico woke up very early in the morning to start building a new shelter. After getting dressed, he quickly got to work, placing several logs as support posts for the roof. He then tied smaller logs to both sides, repeating the same on the opposite end. After a busy morning, the frame of the roof was finally complete. Next, Chico needed to find a way to reinforce the walls. He gathered nearby tree bark to create walls that could block both rain and wind. To ensure a good night's sleep, he also collected fir leaves to make himself a warm and comfortable single bed. Finally, he laid a waterproof tarp over the roof, and just like that, his sturdy shelter was complete. Clay, on the other hand, was trying to craft something from his pink shorts. By tying off the pant legs, he instantly created a sturdy fabric pouch. He then placed the leftover fish meat inside and hung the pouch on a tree branch. That way, even if a bear showed up, it wouldn't be able to reach it. Although his shelter wasn't too bad, it definitely needed some upgrades. Clay stuffed moss into the gaps in the walls to improve insulation, so it wouldn't get too cold inside even when winter arrived. Of course, the top of the fireplace also had to be covered with soil, otherwise, lighting a fire indoors would fill the place with smoke. After completing all the preparations, Clay nervously lit a fire. It would not only provide warmth but also be used for cooking. Next, he needed to find a way to get food. Clay decided to take his gear and head up the mountain to try his luck. However, he hadn't gone far when he encountered a large area of fallen trees. It took great effort to make it through. After walking around for a while, he realized that there were no animals living in the area. This discovery immediately sank his spirits. With no way to supplement his protein intake, his only option was to turn his attention to wild berries. He picked a whole handful, but instead of eating them right away, he decided to store them for the winter. Clay dug a large hole, laid down wooden planks and moss, placed the red berries inside, and sealed it up. Now let's check in with Rose. She was all smiles today after crafting her own wooden fishing rod complete with a spinning reel. Full of excitement, she rushed to the riverbank to test it out. But after standing there for 3 long hours, not even a fish scale was caught. Looks like it's going to be another hungry night. Later that night, just as Rose was about to drift off to sleep, a loud noise jolted her awake. A huge grizzly bear was circling right outside her shelter. In a panic, she fired a flare into the sky. The loud explosion scared the bear off, but now Rose can't help but worry. What will the coming days have in store for her? By day 8, Matt was cooking himself a simple breakfast using some wild mushrooms to stave off hunger. These mushrooms were not only edible, but also great for health. When made into soup, they turned into a delicious and nourishing meal. Just one sip of the hot broth seemed to recharge his energy, filling his body with strength. Feeling revitalized, he planned to explore the area in search of protein sources. But what he didn't expect was a stroke of bad luck. The string of his bow had been chewed through by mice. This was truly unfortunate. Without a bow, it would be nearly impossible to hunt in the coming days, and meat would be off the table. Matt knew that quitting the competition just because of this would be laughable. Others would mock him, and he couldn't let that happen. After sitting and thinking for about 30 minutes, he made up his mind. He would repair the bow himself. Thanks to his skillful hands, he finally managed to restore his weapon. To teach those pesky mice a lesson, he even made a homemade mouse trap right inside his shelter. Looks like grilled mouse might be on the menu soon. The competition has quickly reached day 10. Over here, Michelle has gathered a large bundle of creeping grass roots. While they're known to have decent nutritional value, their taste is, well, awful. She roasted them lightly before chewing, and judging by the look on her face, it was clear they were nearly impossible to swallow. In hopes of getting some real protein, Michelle came up with a plan to catch salmon from the lake. She picked a sturdy stick, tied a bear hook to the end, and used a rock to secure it at the riverbank. Do you think this technique will work? Let us know in the comments. But things took a sudden turn as she returned to camp. Michelle doubled over with intense stomach pain. It must have been from the roots. To prevent poisoning, she chewed on a bit of charcoal that night, hoping it would ease the pain. Luckily, by the next morning, Michelle's body showed no serious symptoms, just lingering fatigue. It was a close call. She almost picked up the phone to call the show and withdraw from the competition. It's now day 12, and lately, Jordan has been constantly busy building his shelter. As a professional carpenter, he only allows himself to relax once his living space is properly set up. To replenish the energy he has burned, Jordan heads to the lake to fish. Unlike Rose, he's more fortunate. Just over 30 minutes in, he catches his first big fish. Back at camp, he immediately cooks up a pot of fish head soup, while the rest of the fish is placed over the fire to smoke for future meals. Let's take a look at Chico and his story. A few days ago, he had been trying to fish by the lake nonstop, but whether it was due to the terrain or not, 3 or 4 days passed, and he still hadn't caught a single fish. To make matters worse, the area he's living in is surrounded by dense forest, yet strangely, he hasn't been able to spot any animals living nearby. Determined to leave this unlucky spot, Chico decided to head to the other side of the lake to check things out. Taking the long way around would take up to 2 days, so even though the distance was estimated to be around 800 meters, he chose to cross directly. In just half an hour, Chico had reached the other shore, but the sight before him left him stunned. The forest there was even denser than the one he had just left. Out of options, he had no choice but to drag his weary body back across the lake. The journey cost him a significant amount of calories, yet yielded nothing in return. Now, he could only survive on wild plant roots to hang on. What will happen when the resources around them start to run out? Will the contestants push themselves to the limit to find food, or slowly walk away from the game? Will the $500,000 prize motivate them to showcase their ultimate survival skills? All of that will unfold in the upcoming episodes. And you, if you only had 10 pieces of gear, how many days do you think you'd survive out here? Now, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe so you won't miss any of the thrilling updates ahead. Thanks for watching till the end. See you next time. Surviving in the wild isn't just a goal, it's a full-blown battle. This isn't a game, and it's definitely not for the weak. 10 contestants are dropped into a freezing wilderness, where they must fight against harsh nature and their own limits for a shot at $500,000. They'll have to give it their all, using every ounce of skill, courage, and mental toughness, because one small mistake could cost them everything. Do you think they can survive for 100 days? Comment below who you think will win and why. The most intense survival competition starts now. Unlike the male contestants in the show, most of whom have already been able to enjoy hearty meat meals, 2 out of the 3 female contestants, Rose and Michelle, are still struggling with hunger. They have been surviving on plants and roots just to get through each day. Hopefully, they'll soon manage to have a proper meal if they want to stay in the competition. It's now day 13, and 9 contestants remain in the competition. Teresa woke up early, simply to warm her backside by the fire. Besides that, her shelter still needed more improvements. She gathered fir tree bark to build a wall around her camp, then covered it with soil. This method would help keep the heat inside much better. Feeling that the inside was too empty, she also built a simple bed using sturdy branches. Sure, it looked nothing like the cozy bed she had at home, but given the harsh conditions, it was already a huge achievement. Now let's check in with Nate, who's come up with a crazy idea. Since his fishing bait kept getting washed back to shore by the waves, he decided to build a small fishing dock. After 3 busy hours, he finally managed to complete his mini dock and excitedly rushed out to the lake to test it. However, the results were pretty disastrous. One by one, the support posts collapsed, and the whole structure slowly fell apart. Turns out, building a dock isn't nearly as easy as he thought. Nate returned to his camp looking quite disappointed, but if he wants to win that $500,000 prize, he'll have to pull himself together quickly. Coulter is in the middle of upgrading his boat. Let's take a look at how it looked before. Now, he's added floating pontoons on both sides to give the boat better balance. Excited, Coulter launched his newly improved vessel into the water, and wow, the difference was incredible. The boat's balance and speed were absolutely perfect. But suddenly, an uninvited guest appeared, a gray bear staring intensely at him. Even worse, the bear started slowly approaching. In a panic, Coulter quickly fired off a flare to scare it away. That was way too close for comfort. The competition has moved into day 15. Jordan was relaxing by the lakeside, enjoying some of his smoked fish. After his meal, he returned to camp and started working on a wooden door. However, he wasn't fully satisfied with it just yet. Jordan crafted a wooden hinge, carefully attached it to the wall at a measured spot, and finally mounted the door in place. Done. Next, he even made a wooden door handle, allowing the door to lock from the inside. Now, his shelter feels much safer and cozier. Meanwhile, Rose still hadn't made much progress. She had to survive by eating seaweed to stave off hunger. At this point, even catching a single fish had become her biggest dream. Rose wove some branches into a makeshift fish trap and threw it into the water, just about 2 meters from shore, without even using any bait. Would any fish happen to swim by? The next morning, Rose eagerly rushed to check her trap, but unsurprisingly, what she caught was a whole lot of disappointment. She had no choice but to continue eating berries and hope that luck would eventually smile on her. Meanwhile, Nate was enjoying a cup of tea he had brewed from pine needles, and his body suddenly felt revitalized. Fueled by this burst of energy, he returned to his grand project. Learning from his previous mistakes, things seemed to go much more smoothly this time. Once he was confident the structure was stable, he carried it down to the water. Nate added several long wooden planks extending from the shore to the dock support. At last, the fishing dock he had been dreaming of was finally completed, and he was absolutely thrilled. Now it was time to set up his fishing rod and see how effective it would be. While waiting, Nate returned to his shelter and sipped some more pine needle tea. Having not eaten for days, this tea was all he had to keep his hunger at bay. Fortunately, his efforts paid off. After just 3 hours, a fish finally took the bait. Though it wasn't huge, it was more than enough to lift his spirits. Nate returned to camp, placed the salmon directly over the coals, and treated himself to a delicious, well-earned grilled fish meal. The competition has now reached day 18, and the number of contestants has hardly changed. The remaining 9 survivalists are still pushing through and, in some ways, even enjoying the journey. Although a few of them are facing serious challenges, it's all just part of the game. Who do you think will be the next to tap out? Let's keep watching to find out. One contestant was up at the crack of dawn, ready to take his boat out. Can you guess who it is? Of course, it's Coulter. He paddled out to the middle of the lake to fish, dropped his line into the water, then simply lay back on his boat, quietly waiting for a bite. After a refreshing midday nap, he woke up to find a small salmon on his line. It wasn't as big as he had hoped, but it proved that his strategy was working. Jordan was feeling an intense wave of homesickness. He tried to stay as busy as possible to distract himself from this overwhelming emotion. Using a branch, he made a simple smoking pipe, filled it with some leaves, and took a deep puff, hoping it would calm his mind. He then went down to the lake, sat in front of the camera, and spoke to the audience, reminding them to like and subscribe so they wouldn't miss any details of the show. But that wasn't what was on his mind. Deep down, he was really missing his wife and kids. The isolation in the wild was starting to take its toll on him. After days of contemplation, Jordan finally decided to call the program organizers. It was with great regret that he had to leave. He had been one of the top contenders for the championship, but with a heavy heart, he exited the competition. Let's move on from Jordan's sad departure and check in on Clay. He's going through the toughest days of his survival journey. Despite trying for days, Clay hasn't caught a single fish. Realizing something needs to change, he decides to switch fishing spots and even builds a new fishing tool. After 2.5 hours of hard work, he finishes crafting a simple but handy fishing net. Excited, Clay rushes to the lake, ready to test it out. Unfortunately, luck isn't on his side. He stands on the shore, fishing for 3 long hours, but catches absolutely nothing. Out of options, Clay heads back to camp empty-handed. Looks like he'll be surviving on wild berries for a while longer. Hang in there, Clay. Let's check in with Michelle. She's searching for something along the lakeshore, flipping over rocks and inspecting every little nook. Finally, she finds a few freshwater snails. Back at camp, she cooks them in a pot. The meat is tender, chewy, and full of flavor. Even though Michelle has spent days trying to catch fish without success, she now plans to weave a fish trap from branches to boost her chances. Once finished, she tosses it straight into the lake, without even bothering to add bait, hoping something might wander inside. Back at camp, she moves her entire kitchen setup outdoors, believing it's safer to cook under the open sky. However, she starts to notice her physical condition worsening. She feels more exhausted than before. If this keeps up, it could become serious. The next morning, Michelle eagerly heads to the lake to check her trap, clinging to a shred of hope. But when she arrives, she sees the trap has been disturbed by something. Definitely not the result she was hoping for. Her final bit of hope vanishes. Michelle can only sit silently at camp, staring blankly into the distance, lost in disappointment. What's Matt up to? Turns out he's heading to the lake to fish. He casts his line once, twice, 3 times, and many more, but all he reels in is an empty hook each time. Frustrated, Matt jumps into the water to try and catch fish by hand. Sadly for him, the lake water is freezing cold. So much for that bright idea, buddy. He climbs back onto the shore, keeps casting, and prays for a miracle. And surprise, the sea gods finally grant him a tiny little fish. Well, better than nothing. Matt returns to camp, grills the fish over a charcoal fire, filling the air with delicious aromas, and enjoys the small but hard-earned feast. After more than 8,000 minutes, Chico finally finished forging his legendary sword. It looked tiny, more like a toy you'd find at a supermarket. He even showed off a few sword moves, and honestly, it was a bit worrying. Testing it on wood, though, it turned out to be surprisingly useful. But that's not all. Since the start of the competition, Chico has lost over 22 pounds. At this rate, he might turn into a supermodel by the end of the show. To stop this from happening, he decided to build a fish trap. While he was working, he suddenly heard a strange noise from behind. Could it be a ghost? Nope, it was a giant grizzly bear lurking near camp. Even though Chico looked strong, facing a grizzly was another story. Quickly, he pulled out his whistle and blew it as hard as he could. Amazingly, the bear ran off, probably forgetting its flip-flops in the panic. Relieved, Chico went back to work. He took his fish basket to the lake, stuffed a few rocks inside, and tossed it into the water, hoping that some small fish would fall in love with their new dream home. Nate has been wandering around restlessly these days because he hasn't been sleeping well. He was hoping the organizers would grant him a nice mattress and a soft pillow so he could finally get a good night's sleep. However, after an emergency meeting, the production team flat out rejected Nate's request. It seems like I talked too much, so he ended up making himself a mattress out of rope. The tiny fish from a few days ago was basically not enough to fill his stomach, so Matt thought about finding some mushrooms under the grass he had just dug up. However, unexpectedly, a swarm of hornets suddenly flew out from the bushes. He pretended to be a rock, standing motionless so they wouldn't recognize him. But who would have thought that the hornets would sting him without missing a single hit? After failing so many times, he started to doubt his best friend, and a more negative attitude began to take root in his mind. That evening, Matt sat in front of the camera and shared his thoughts about the harshness of the competition, saying that not everyone could overcome the challenges here. The next morning, he returned to the lake to fish with high hopes, but it seemed like this would be his last time fishing here. In a moment of despair, Matt called the production team directly and withdrew from the competition under the pressure of both food and mental exhaustion. He hoped that after returning home, he would continue to train and come back stronger for the next season. When she reached Michelle's spot, she looked much thinner compared to when she first started. It was clear that fishing here wasn't effective. She could only bring her bow and arrows into the forest, hoping for a stroke of luck. However, she didn't get far before feeling dizzy and had to sit down to rest for a while. After taking a large loop, she finally returned to camp. Suddenly, a grouse appeared from a distance. She carefully picked up her bow and arrows and crept toward it, but as soon as she was in shooting range, it disappeared. With the pain in her chest, she realized she probably couldn't continue. In the end, Michelle called the show to announce her withdrawal from the competition, never expecting things to turn out so badly for her. It seems like everything is happening very quickly. In this episode alone, 3 contestants, Jordan, Matt, and Michelle, have withdrawn from the competition, all feeling regret and disappointment. This just shows that survival in the wild is no ordinary game. It requires knowledge, skills, and experience to face the challenges of life and nature. Who will win the $500,000 prize? Leave a comment with the name of the contestant who has impressed you the most. And now, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to follow the latest episodes of the show. See you in the next episode. 10 contestants, 10 different personalities, but they all share one goal: to win and claim the $500,000 prize. Many have already left the game due to exhaustion, while the remaining players continue to endure the harsh wilderness of this place. At Chico Lake in Canada, beyond the extreme freezing temperatures, they also face aggressive grizzly bears that could attack at any moment. But before we dive into the next chapter of this survival showdown, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel to keep up with the thrilling challenges ahead. Let's get started. In the past 3 episodes, for contestants, Tim, Jordan, Matt, and Michelle have withdrawn from the competition. Although each of them had their own reasons, there's no denying the harshness of this place. Now, let's dive into the exciting next developments of the competition. First, let's check in with Clay. Today, he's planning to go hunting. He follows the mountain ridge upward. No protein in sight yet, but he does come across some freshly dropped, still warm black pellets. Judging by the details, it seems to be rabbit droppings. Clay moves a little further ahead, and sure enough, something unexpected happens. A deer suddenly jumps out of the bushes right in front of him. He immediately focuses, holding his breath and carefully creeping forward so the deer wouldn't notice him. He takes aim meticulously and, boom, an arrow strikes the deer straight in the head, ending its life instantly. Clay roars with excitement, overjoyed that from now on, food would no longer be a worry. To avoid attracting other animals with the scent, he quickly processes the meat on the spot. However, the hunting spot is about 5 kilometers away from his camp, so he can't carry all the meat back at once. He has to split it into several trips. Although this is exhausting, just thinking about having venison for dinner makes all his fatigue melt away. He returned to camp and hung all the venison up in the trees using ropes. In this way, only a bear with wings could possibly get to the meat. That night, he treated himself to an unforgettable meal of tender, juicy, and aromatic roasted venison. Hopefully, the delicious smell wouldn't lure other wild animals to the party. At this point, it seemed like all Clay needed to do was eat, sleep, and wait for the day he could claim that $500,000 prize. Coulter is currently on a strict diet to lose weight. He mostly stays around his camp, gathering wild berries. Judging by the amount he's collected, it looks like he might just have enough to survive until winter. Besides that, he's also developed a hobby of picking flowers and catching butterflies. By day 23 of the competition, Coulter was hoping to enjoy some berries for breakfast. However, to his surprise, his storage had been raided, berries were scattered everywhere, and most of them had been eaten. Clearly, being a vegetarian isn't always the safest bet in the wild. So, what will he eat next? Leaves? Nope. Coulter is now gathering materials to build a fish trap. And just 2 hours later, it's done. His trap looks way more advanced than what we've seen from the other contestants. Then, he sets off in his trusty battleship to the middle of the lake and tosses the trap into the water. Now, it's just a matter of waiting for the fish to bite. Over on Teresa's side, she was sleeping in a bit. The weather outside was just too cold. After waking up, she lit a small fire to warm up. But surprise, when she built her shelter, she forgot to include a chimney. So as soon as the fire started, smoke filled the entire space like a fog machine on overdrive. Fed up, she crawled out of her den to fix the problem. First stop, the lakeshore, where she gathered as many stones as she could carry. Back at camp, she carefully stacked them like Lego bricks, leaving a gap in the middle for the smoke to escape. Now, she no longer has to worry about choking on smoke indoors. Nate looked like he had aged 10 years since the beginning of the show, His cheeks were sunken from days without protein, and his hair had turned noticeably grayer. He headed over to his makeshift dock to check the fish trap. From afar, he spotted the silhouette of a big fish. Excited, he rushed to pull it in, but just as it neared the shore, the fish thrashed its tail and broke free. Frustrated and disappointed, Nate couldn't believe his bad luck. With nothing else to do, he trudged back to camp and sipped on pine needle tea to calm his nerves. Determined not to let this happen again, he crafted his own fishing net. Now it's time to test it out and see if any fish take the bait. Since Clay had successfully hunted a whole deer yesterday, he woke up early this morning to check the meat he had hung up in the trees. Luckily, it was still perfectly intact. Today, Clay planned to build a wooden smoker to preserve the rest of the venison. Without wasting a second, he jumped right into work, putting in 200% of his effort. Amazingly, it only took him 3 hours to complete the smoker. After that, he carefully cut the venison into thick slices and neatly hung them inside the smoker. While most contestants have visibly lost weight throughout the competition, at this rate, Clay might actually gain a few dozen pounds. Here we go. Today, Chico woke up early to check his fish trap. As expected, he managed to catch some water and lake weeds. Out of options, he decided to try fishing with a line instead. After casting his line so many times that his arm felt like it might fall off, Chico finally caught a fish. It was a bit small, but it was enough to lift his spirits after the earlier disappointment. He hurried back to camp to cook a fish stew, tossing in a few roots for extra flavor. Not long after, the stew was ready, filling the air with a sweet, mouth-watering aroma. Here's hoping that someday soon, I'll get to taste a delicious dish like that too. With the help of his newly crafted net, Nate approached the fishing rod to check on it. As soon as he arrived, he spotted a small salmon caught on the line. This time, there was no escape. Nate swiftly swung the net and scooped up the fish before it had a chance to wriggle free. A clean and precise move. On day 24 of the challenge, Nate woke up with a dull pain in his stomach. After a moment of reflection, he remembered. Yesterday morning, he had accidentally drunk water boiled from a pot that had squirrel feces in it. A deadly mistake. Squirrel droppings can harbor countless dangerous bacteria and parasites. While no severe symptoms had appeared yet, he remained extremely cautious. Refusing to let fatigue slow him down, Nate decided to craft a wooden fishing rod with a reel. With this upgrade, he could cast bait farther and increase his chances of catching fish. But not long after, the stomach pain suddenly became much more intense. Before he knew it, Nate collapsed to the ground in agony. It was almost certain now he had been infected by bacteria from the squirrel feces. As a former warrior, Nate had always prioritized his health. Sitting there, battling his thoughts for half an hour, he realized that above all else, his life and family came first. With a heavy heart, he made the difficult decision to call the show's crew and request to withdraw from the challenge. It was truly heartbreaking, considering the relentless effort he had poured in. As he prepared to leave, snow began to fall from the sky, as if nature itself was trying to comfort and console him. In less than a month, only 5 contestants remained in the competition. Among them, Clay stood out as the one who had hunted the largest game so far. Let's see how he'll perform in the days to come. His current life is quite comfortable. Each day, he enjoys smoked venison and meals made from snails and deer, all skillfully prepared by his own hands. In his spare time, he even takes the opportunity to proudly show off the hard-earned trophies he fought so hard to obtain. Chico had been facing a severe food shortage for days. He could only drink water boiled with tree roots to stave off his hunger. Despite this, his shelter still needed improvement, as winter was fast approaching. He reinforced the surrounding branches of his shelter to better retain heat. Next, he set out toward the lake to gather materials for building a fireplace. However, the journey was anything but easy. The ground was wet and slippery, and he even slipped and nearly twisted his ankle. After finally collecting enough materials and returning to camp, he quickly got to work, crafting a fireplace for himself. He filled all the gaps with packed earth, and in the end, the result was a complete success. Meanwhile, Coulter had gathered a large amount of bolete mushrooms from across the hillside to stock up for the coming winter. That evening, he used steel wire to skewer dozens of them, hanging them above the roof to smoke dry. Looks like Clay has a serious rival now. Winter arrived swiftly, and Coulter's entire camp was soon blanketed in snow. Even so, he remained warm and secure inside. But to win this competition, he knew he had to further reinforce his shelter. He filled the gaps in the walls and roof with spruce branches, even upgrading the door for better insulation. With these improvements, Coulter was confident. He truly believed he could win this competition. After finishing all his work, Coulter headed to the lake to check the fish trap he had set earlier. Unsurprisingly, the trap was empty. What a waste of time and effort. Still, not wanting to return empty-handed, he grabbed his fishing rod and moved to deeper waters to try his luck. Just a few minutes after casting his line, he caught his first fish. But that wasn't enough. He cast the line once more, and just as he had hoped, a second fish took the bait. As the sun began to set, Coulter returned to his camp with 2 fish in hand, just enough to keep him going for another week. The competition is reaching its final stretch. Will an unexpected twist unfold soon? Or will Clay, with his abundant food supply, secure victory in this season's challenge? We'll find out in the next episode. For now, don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the grand finale, and leave a comment below telling us who your personal champion is. Thanks for watching, and see you next time. As promised, welcome back to the final stop of the 100-day survival challenge at Lake Chico, Canada. The last person standing will be crowned the winner and take home the grand prize of $500,000. Before we dive into the action, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss any of our thrilling future survival competitions. Now let's get started. First, let's recap the highlights from the previous episode. Clay is currently the top contender for the championship, thanks to the abundant protein supply from the deer he hunted, enough to keep him going for up to 3 months without needing to search for more food. Meanwhile, the remaining contestants are still struggling daily to find something to eat. At times, their only options are wild berries and boiled water just to stay alive. Teresa kicks off today's episode. She hasn't caught a single fish in over a month and has been surviving solely on foraged berries and edible roots. While preparing to return to camp after another long day of gathering, she suddenly realizes the surroundings look unfamiliar. She keeps walking, but the trail back just isn't there. Panic sets in as she starts to worry she might be lost. Determined not to give up, Teresa makes her way toward the lake, hoping it will help her get her bearings. Thankfully, before long, her shelter finally comes into view. Relief washes over her as she finds her way back home. Today's total haul includes just a handful of berries and some wild greens. Not too bad, but certainly not enough to keep her stomach full. Living off plants alone isn't a sustainable strategy, especially with winter fast approaching. In recent days, Rose has been diligently setting traps, determined to secure a stable food source. This morning, she woke up early and carefully checked each one. And finally, her efforts have paid off. One of the traps has caught a rabbit. Now it's time for Rose to head back and celebrate this glorious victory. After going so long without meat, just one small bite was enough to remind her of the irresistible, rich flavor she's been missing. A new day has arrived. As usual, Clay took a walk by the lake, but today something unusual caught his eye. Fresh grizzly bear tracks on the ground. Following the trail, he realized the bear had been near his food storage shelter. Without hesitation, Clay sprinted to check the storage. Fortunately, his shelter was built solid and secure, so all the meat inside remained untouched. But this was a very bad sign. To prevent the bear from returning, Clay decided to build a simple alarm system. He set up a tripwire connected to a makeshift noisemaker, so the next time the bear comes snooping around, the alarm will go off and scare it away. Although Clay had personally stockpiled a large amount of venison, he didn't dare to use it wastefully. He knew that in order to last until the end, everything had to be calculated carefully. He planned out his daily tasks in detail and rationed his meat supply as efficiently as possible. In addition, Clay often went to the lake to fish, hoping to supplement his diet with fresh nutrients. However, today didn't seem to be his lucky day. He stood by the lake for half a day without catching a single fish. Quietly reeling in his line, Clay returned to camp to figure out another plan for his next meal. As usual, Teresa woke up early and went out to gather berries. If she couldn't catch any fish, being a vegetarian for the time being was just fine. While strolling along the lakeshore, she suddenly spotted something white on the ground. Taking a closer look, She was startled. It was a small fish. Oh my God! Thank you, Lord. She had finally caught a fish. Just as Teresa was about to head back to camp, she spotted another fish, this time a large one, right by the shore. What an incredible stroke of luck. She quickly cleaned the fish and brought both of them back to camp. Catching 2 fish in one day brought a noticeable brightness and joy to her face. Back at camp, she immediately got to work cooking. The fish was absolutely delicious. Even though it wasn't the freshest catch, Teresa made sure not to waste a single bite, knowing she needed every bit of energy she could get. Good morning, Clay. As he mentioned earlier, this morning he's heading to the lakeside to catch some fish and switch up his meals a bit. But the fish here are incredibly smart, just dangling a hook in the water isn't going to cut it. Suddenly, while everything seems peaceful, something or someone appears to be approaching from a distance. Wait a second, that's not a person, it's a massive grizzly bear heading straight toward him. With no weapons in hand, Clay knows better than to try his luck. When it comes to creatures like this, running is the smarter option. He quickly scrambles up a tree and watches nervously from above. The bear keeps moving closer to his camera gear, but just as it nears, it suddenly freezes, sensing something unsettling. Without warning, it turns around and bolts away. Clay is left wondering, how did the bear even know I was here? What was it looking for? The mystery deepens. Following the tracks, Clay discovers that the spot where the grizzly disappeared is only about 20 meters from his shelter. This sends a chill down his spine. He's genuinely terrified. What could the bear possibly want with him? Could it be the bear is in love with him? Eating mushrooms every day had clearly taken a toll on Coulter. He had become noticeably skinny. As of now, he had lost over 30 pounds. Despite his weakened body, he still diligently rowed his small boat out to the middle of the lake each day, hoping to check the fish traps and change up his meals. Today was no different. Coulter struggled to pull up the trap, but it was so heavy that he couldn't lift it. For a moment, he thought he had caught a fish weighing dozens of pounds. But after multiple attempts, he started to suspect that the trap had probably gotten stuck on a rock beneath the water. With no other choice, Coulter had to cut the rope and return empty-handed. Just as he was about to head back to camp, he noticed something floating on the water. He quickly scooped it up. It turned out to be the carcass of a small bird. Normally, Coulter wouldn't even bother with something like that, but in his current condition, even a little bird offered a valuable source of protein. He carefully plucked the feathers, removed the innards, and brought it back to camp. That evening, Coulter treated himself to a special mushroom soup mixed with bird meat. In the harshness of survival, the taste was indescribably good. Since the time she successfully trapped a rabbit, Rose had poured all her energy into setting more snares. However, in recent days, no more rabbits had fallen into her traps. She wandered around the hillside, checking over a dozen snare traps, but found nothing. Suddenly, after bending down to check a trap, she felt dizzy and was forced to stop and rest for a while. This was a worrying sign about her deteriorating health. With a weakened body, she struggled to make her way back to camp to rest. At the same time, the show's crew was conducting a routine health checkup for the contestants. They arrived at her camp and began examining her condition. After some time, the medical team concluded that Rose was no longer physically fit to continue the challenge. For her own safety, and despite her determination, Rose had no choice but to make the difficult decision to withdraw from the competition. The competition had reached day 38, with only 4 contestants remaining. Every day at noon, Teresa would go down to the lake to try her luck. If she couldn't catch any fish, she would gather some rose hips to stave off her hunger. This simple routine had essentially helped her survive until now. Earlier, she had found the remains of a salmon by the lake shore, which convinced her that fish were still around. Determined, Teresa stayed up late that night to weave a new fish basket. The next morning, braving the cold, she made her way back to the lake to set her trap, hoping that she would soon catch a big fish. Coulter was on his way to check the fishing net he had set not long ago, and this time, he finally had to catch 2 salmon weighing around 10 pounds in total. His heart was so full of joy it felt like it might leap out of his chest. Back on shore, overwhelmed with excitement, he decided to smoke one of the fish, while the other would be used to make a hearty soup. Watch out, Clay, I'm catching up. Day 66 of the challenge. The show was conducting a routine health check for all the contestants. One by one, they were examined by the medical team. Most of them were doing fine except for one person, Coulter. His body indicators showed that he was no longer fit to continue the challenge. He couldn't hold back his tears upon hearing the news. Health always comes first, wishing Coulter strength and good health to continue pursuing his survival passion. There are only 3 contestants left in the competition. This morning, Clay ate his last piece of smoked venison. He now has no food reserves left. He went to the lake to check the fishing net he had set up, but strong waves had wrapped the net around a log, rendering it useless. That method was no longer effective. It would be better to conserve energy and go hunting in the mountains. Clay immediately climbed the hill and set up several snare traps. If even one of them catches prey, his chances of winning will significantly increase. At this point, Teresa had nearly reached her physical limit. She felt dizzy just from going out to collect a bit of firewood and had to return to her shelter to rest. But just then, the program informed her that a medical checkup was about to take place. The unexpected news sparked a glimmer of hope in Teresa. Could it be that she had won the challenge and the $500,000 prize? With the arrival of the medical team, Teresa cooperated fully and completed all the examinations. She thought good news was on the way. However, the doctors informed her that her body could no longer sustain the stress of the challenge. To prevent serious damage, they had to remove Teresa from the competition. Hearing this, she was deeply disappointed. But those were the rules of the show. She had to accept her journey, ending in 3rd place. Still, Teresa had conquered her own limits, and hopefully, we'll see her again in the next season. Currently, only 2 contestants remain on the survival battlefield, Chico and Clay. The race for the championship title and the $500,000 prize is more intense than ever. Who will be the last one standing? Let's keep watching to find out. Chico is extremely hungry at this point. He's even considering eating tree bark to survive. First, he scrapes off the tough outer layer and only eats the soft inner part. Then, he tosses it into a pot and cooks it. Just 10 minutes later, he starts digging into this wild survival delicacy. But hey, don't try this at home, it's not tasty at all. In the early hours of day 73, the show's medical team heads to Chico's camp for a health check. But in truth, it was Chico who called them. Over the past few days, he had eaten everything edible he could find. His heart had started beating faster and faster, a clear sign his body was reaching its limit. No matter how strong or tough you are, out here in the wild, you're still just a fragile being in the face of nature. The day has finally arrived. To surprise Clay, the show's team came to his camp for a routine health check. After completing the examination and asking about his condition, they made the big announcement. Clay was the last one standing and the winner of the $500,000 prize. Overwhelmed with joy, he was speechless. All the patience, effort, and hope he had held on to were finally rewarded. Now, let's send our warmest congratulations to our champion. See you next time.